Imagine this. You are standing on a beautiful island. The sun is warm, the water is crystal clear. Around you there are palaces made of gold and silver. Canals connect rings of land like a giant target. Ships from all over the world come to trade. This is the greatest civilization the world has ever seen. And then, in one day and one night, it is gone, swallowed by the ocean, vanished without a trace. This is the story of Atlantis, the most famous lost city in history. For thousands of years, people have searched for it. Scientists, explorers, treasure hunters, and dreamers. They have looked everywhere, under the ocean, in the desert, even in Antarctica. But here is the shocking question. Was Atlantis ever real? Or is it just a story, a warning from a philosopher who lived 2,400 years ago? Today, we're going to find out. We will travel back in time to the man who first told the story. We will explore the real disasters that might have inspired it, and we will discover why this legend refuses to die.
Let's start at the beginning. The only source of the Atlantis story is a man named Plato. He was a Greek philosopher who lived from 427 to 347 BC. He is one of the most important thinkers in human history. Plato wrote many dialogues, which are like philosophical plays. In two of them, Timaeus and Critias, he tells the story of Atlantis. He writes about a powerful island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time. It was larger than Libya and Asia combined. It had conquered much of Europe and Africa. But here is the twist. Plato claims he didn't make it up. He says the story came from Egypt. An Egyptian priest told it to a Greek traveler named Solon, who brought it back to Greece. Solon then passed it down through generations until it reached Plato. So, was Plato telling the truth? Was he just reporting an ancient Egyptian record? Or was he creating a fictional story to teach a lesson? Most scientists and historians today agree on one thing. The Atlantis story is almost certainly a myth. But it is a myth with a very important purpose. Let me tell you what Plato actually wrote. It is an incredible story. According to Plato, the gods divided the world among themselves. The sea god Poseidon received the island of Atlantis. He fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito, who lived on a mountain in the center of the island. To protect her, Poseidon carved the mountain into a palace. He surrounded it with 3 circular moats. These moats were separated by rings of land, and he created canals so ships could sail into the city. Cleito gave birth to 5 pairs of twin sons. The eldest was named Atlas, and the entire island and the ocean around it were named after him. The sons became the kings of Atlantis, each ruling different parts of the kingdom. The city was magnificent. The walls were built from red, white, and black stone. They were covered with brass, tin, and a mysterious metal called orichalcum. The palaces were filled with gold and silver. For generations, the Atlanteans were good people. They were wise. They were just. They lived in harmony with the gods. But then they changed. They became greedy. They became arrogant. They started conquering their neighbors. They enslaved other peoples. They lost their virtue. And this is where the punishment comes. The gods became angry. Zeus decided to punish the Atlanteans for their corruption. And in one day and one night of terrible earthquakes and floods, the island sank into the sea. Plato writes that the sea became impassable because of the mud left behind by the sinking island. It is a dramatic story. It is a warning. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when a civilization loses its moral compass.
Now, this is where things get interesting. Was Plato telling a true story, or was he making it all up? Most scholars today believe Plato invented the story for philosophical purposes. But here's the thing. Plato didn't just write fiction for fun. He was trying to make a point. The Atlantis story is actually a contrast. Plato describes 2 societies. One is Atlantis, a corrupt, greedy, warlike empire. The other is ancient Athens, a virtuous, wise, and just state.
Plato was using the story to show what happens when a society is ruled by greed versus when it is ruled by wisdom. It was a way to teach his political and ethical theories. As one scholar put it, the Atlantis story is true for Plato not because it is historical fact, but because he thought such a story was necessary and beneficial for his citizens. But that hasn't stopped people from searching for it.
People have been searching for Atlantis for centuries. Ever since Plato wrote about it, explorers have wanted to find it. In the 19th century, an American politician named Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. He argued that Atlantis was real and that it was the mother civilization for all ancient cultures. His book became wildly popular and inspired a whole new wave of Atlantis hunters. Since then, almost every place on Earth has been proposed as the location of Atlantis. As one historian put it, pick a spot on the map, and someone has said that Atlantis was there. Let's look at some of the most popular theories. Another theory points to the ancient Greek city of Helike. In 373 BC, just a few years before Plato wrote his dialogues, an earthquake and tsunami destroyed Helike. It sank into the sea. It was a wealthy, powerful city that had been a major center of trade. Classical scholars have proposed that this event might have inspired Plato's Atlantis story. The timing is exactly right. Plato was writing around the time of this disaster. But again, there's a problem. Helike is much too small. Plato described Atlantis as larger than Libya and Asia combined. Helike was just one Greek city. In 2004, a man named Robert Sarmast made headlines. He claimed he had found Atlantis off the coast of Cyprus. He said his sonar images showed man-made structures, including walls and canals, lying 1.5 kilometers beneath the Mediterranean Sea. The media covered the story. It seemed like the mystery was solved. But then, scientists took a closer look. Geologists and archaeologists completely disagreed with his interpretations. They studied the same sonar data and found something different. The structures Sarmast identified were not walls or canals. They were natural geological formations, salt tectonics, compressional folds, features formed by millions of years of natural processes, not human hands. As one archaeologist said, "This is not archaeology. As far as we're concerned, this is just another ridiculous claim." The list of proposed locations goes on and on. Some people think Atlantis was in the Black Sea. Others say it was in the Caribbean. Some have suggested it was in Spain, Malta, or even under what is now Antarctica. In 2009, a man named Jim Allen published a book claiming Atlantis was in Bolivia on the Altiplano. He identified a site with a rectangular plain and concentric rings of land and water channels, just as Plato described. But none of these theories have held up to scientific scrutiny. No archaeological evidence has ever been found that matches Plato's description. Not a single artifact, not one inscription, nothing. So what happened to Atlantis? The truth is, nothing happened to it. It never existed. But that doesn't mean the story is worthless. In fact, the Atlantis story has an important message that is still relevant today. Plato used the story to warn about the dangers of arrogance and greed. The Atlantean had everything: wealth, power, technology, but they lost their moral compass, they became corrupt, and they were destroyed. It's a warning that applies to every civilization, including ours. As one scholar explained, Plato was exploring his ideas about divine versus human nature, ideal societies, the gradual corruption of human society. Atlantis was just a different vehicle to get at his favorite themes.
If Atlantis never existed, why do we still care? Why do we keep searching? The answer is simple. Because the story captures our imagination. It speaks to something deep within us, the idea of a lost civilization, the fear that our own society could fall, the hope that there is a hidden truth waiting to be discovered. As National Geographic explorer Robert Ballard said, who discovered the Titanic, the story of Atlantis is logical because cataclysmic floods and volcanic explosions have happened throughout history. Humans have always experienced disasters, and we have always told stories about them. But Ballard also noted that no Nobel laureates have said that what Plato wrote about Atlantis is true. That's a polite way of saying that the scientific community doesn't take the theory seriously.
So, let's put it all together. What happened to the lost city of Atlantis? Nothing, because it was never there. Atlantis was a story, a powerful, influential story that has captivated humanity for over 2,000 years. It was created by Plato to teach a moral lesson about hubris, greed, and the fragility of civilization. There is no archaeological evidence that Atlantis ever existed, no Egyptian records, no Greek inscriptions, no sunken ruins, nothing but Plato's dialogues. The various theories about its location have all been debunked. The structures on the ocean floor turned out to be natural formations. The timelines don't match, the geography doesn't match, it just doesn't hold up. But here is the thing. Even though Atlantis is a myth, its message is real. Societies do fall. Empires do crumble. Greed and arrogance do destroy civilizations. The question is not whether Atlantis existed. The question is whether we will learn the lesson that Plato was trying to teach us. If this video made you think about the rise and fall of civilizations, do me a favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments, do you think modern society could suffer the same fate as Atlantis? Or have we learned from the past? I'll read the best answers. Atlantis may be a myth, but the warning is real. Let's make sure we listen. See you in the next video.